Hi, welcome to Swishing Mindsets. This is Anuradha, and today I'm speaking to Aparna Sanyal, who's come out with a book, Instruments of Torture, published by HarperCollins. Hi, Aparna.
Hi, Anuradha. My hair decides to start misbehaving the minute you switch on the camera. Wonderful.
Don't worry, this is mostly audio, so it's
My
okay.
Oh, that's good. My hair is my instrument of torture right
Uh,
now.
Also, I have to tell you this since you mentioned that. So your
Yeah.
book, I was at work and there was this fly buzzing around, and I decided to swat it using your book.
Oh my
Later,
God.
when I picked it up, I mean, I was
Hmm.
not trying to kill it, but when I picked up the book, it was dead. Okay. So I was like,
Ah,
okay, so the book turned into an instrument of torture.
yeah, there you go. Inside
Quite
and out,
literally.
everything around me, everything that I touch. Kind of like a, what do you call it? The Scarlet Lady or something like that with my instrument of torture,
So the
which
book
is
today was an instrument of torture, but
wonderful. Wonderful. I am very proud of it. It completed its purpose.
yes, it did. I've never managed to swat and kill a fly before. And I was like, oh, I wasn't
Excellent.
even intending to. Yeah, I was
Well,
like, oh,
congratulations, though. You should not feel bad. That's a wonderful first. Congratulations on that.
yes, thank you. And congratulations to your book as well.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So, I've been reading this. I told you initially, I was the first couple of days when I got the book, I was like, okay, do I want to read it? It's going to be so sad and horrific. So, but then I picked it up and I read the first one. And of
Hmm.
course, it's like,
It was
that's,
sad and horrific.
but there was so much beauty in it, you
Oh,
know,
I'm
that is
glad you
the
thought
thing,
so. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So I was very surprised. And of course, the rack, that was the first one, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
about the boy who's basically turns out to be a dwarf. He's
Dwarf.
adopted and he's given
Yeah.
hormones. I can mention it because it's there in the
Yes, it's everywhere.
yeah,
The first story is the most talked
yeah,
about.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's everywhere. So there was just so much beauty. And in
Hmm.
all your stories that I've read, somehow like one or two are like they're just sad, and
Yeah.
but they're few. But the rest of them somehow they seem to find their own happy ending, whether you
Yeah,
call
I
it
guess.
twisted or whatever. So is that how you
Yeah.
set out?
Yeah. I think I set out not thinking in terms of this is going to be a happy ending or a sad ending, more like it's going to follow the trajectory which feels most natural to the person. So, and I get asked this a lot, that where did you make these characters up from? And I always tell people most of these characters are people I have known or interacted with in my life. So they are fictionalized accounts of people I've known. So therefore, what I do is I think about, if this character were to live out their true potential, where would it lead them? So I'm not thinking about, is this going to be a horrific ending? And oh, I have to insert a murder here, or I have to insert abuse here. But it's a much more, it just is something that I think it just comes naturally to me because I have such a pleasing and sunny disposition. So the torture kind of writes itself.
So you're saying that a lot of it is basically they're just taking the character to the logical conclusion, really.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
and
that's
some of
yeah.
them you actually knew these people that the stories are based on.
Yes, yes, actually. So, for example, I mean, not the dwarf per se. That actually is probably one of the few stories that does not have a character that I know personally. But for example, the person with gynecomastia, the person who has voyeuristic tendencies, or the person who is the beauty queen. So that is actually somebody I've known pretty closely. And one of the stories also has me as a character, because, and obviously, this is not me in my life, but me in a trajectory which would, if I were placed in a different environment, and what that trajectory would lead to. But yes, I identify with that character. And a lot of the places are actually places from my own childhood and from my own life as well. So yeah,
Yeah, would
so
you care
there
to
is.
mention? I mean, if you don't mind, which one
Absolutely.
is yours based
Yes,
on yours? Yeah.
absolutely. Based on mine. Well, as I was telling you just before we started this chat, I've lived my entire life with major depressive disorder and anxiety disorder as well. So I consider myself to be fairly neurodiverse. And one of the characters that I wrote, which was actually something that happens to me when I go off my little yellow pills, is exactly how I wrote the experience of Vibhuti. So, Scold Bridal is the name of the story, and it's about a woman who is married to this young man who doesn't believe in anything called depression, and how he very systematically takes her off her little yellow pills, and the after effects of that. So that character effectively is Vibhuti is me when I come off my medication. I find there are very little things, and I've been very unabashed in talking about them. So, for example, there's an immediate jump in my libido, because you'll find that when you take long-term medication for something like depression, it kind of puts you at a flat line rather than be this up and down kind of person. So, so it makes a difference to your libido, it makes a difference to your appetite, your sleep, your mood, of course. So, so all of those things are what I've tried to show affects Vibhuti. And of course, she's not as lucky as I am. Her trajectory is not as privileged or blessed as mine is. But yeah, that's me in the book, very clearly.
Yeah, I mean, her husband Googles mental illness and
Yep.
depression, and one of the
Yeah.
results tells him that it's nothing, it's just hogwash, you know?
Which is you when you go
Yeah.
on the internet, and when you go on the internet, you'll find so many websites that actually say that you can think yourself better. And there's nothing that actually speaks about how synapses and neurons are affected, and that if you actually MRI a person's head once they've suffered with this illness for a long enough time, you'll find that their brain functions differently at a very seminal cellular level. So especially when I speak about Vibhuti and Sharan, so I even named the characters as such: Vibhuti because she burns herself, and Sharan because that's where she goes to find her solace and her security. But Sharan cannot give her Sharan. So at the end of it. So especially when I've spoken about them in a middle class, smaller city milieu. And I incidentally grew up in Nagpur. So I saw a lot of that where people would just look at me like I was a stranger when I would mention having this particular illness. In fact, a lot of doctors too would say, well, but why? You're such a lucky girl. You're such a happy, smiling girl. How can you say that you're, depressed or that you have this syndrome? So that's why looking at it from Sharon's perspective, I imagined him as being this very, typical first generation educated person that, I lived side by side in a place like Nagpur. So that's where that comes from.
Yeah, because it's like, what problem do you have anyway? You know, so
Mm,
why are you depressed? That's what it
exactly.
is. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And
Mm.
I think our need for linearity in our mental health is very strange, because I think all of us feel that, Are lekin, look at the beggar outside on the street. You're not like him. What do you have to be sad about? And I used to feel this overarching guilt through my entire life, because I am so privileged. And first off, I have to say that, I come from such a place of privilege. Um, but what my psychiatrist told me was that just because somebody is feeling more pain, or you look at them and you think, oh, there's a beggar on the street and they're feeling pain, does not negate your own pain. So, so in that sense, that really dropped the coin for me. And that's when I realized that we just go through life thinking, Nani, come on, let's think ourselves out of it. Arey, it could be worse. And that almost kind of toxic positivity that we pass off as being positive people is actually, I think, doing a lot of damage to our, to at least especially to the Indian milieu still. Because I mean, especially for women as well, we pass off so much discomfort as normal, just because we've been told by our own moms and our grandmoms and all the aunties that this is expected of you. So that's
Yeah, like the
the
husband
thing.
in the story, his friend tells him just give her one tight slap. He tells his mother, scold her a little. She's not concentrating on housework. You know, things like
Exactly.
that. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
really.
Which I've seen happen around me a lot, Anuradha, because
Mm.
I know of so many people whose families, I mean, are not as lucky as me, and whose families do not understand. And I know people who themselves have said, when I've said, and in the past I've done a little bit of work speaking on mental illness at different fora, and I've so many youngsters have come up to me and said, but ma'am, a, we don't have the resources. B, if we tell our parents, they'll just tell us, one slap and come on, go do your work. What is all this depression and all of this nonsense? And these are kids who are just so, we're talking about Bombay kids, we're talking about Pune kids. We're not talking about kids who are in a gaon somewhere, who don't have access to the internet or who don't have access to resources. But it's just that that stigma is so internalized by all of us that we don't even need the neighborhood auntie to tell us ki अरे तू पागल है क्या. In our own head we start thinking ha, there must be something very very wrong with me, that's why I have to go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist. So I think that's and the very important thing, another thing that my psychologists and psychiatrists had told me very long ago, is that when you yourself suffer from an illness which is like a life changing, continues for the rest of your life kind of illness, it's not just you, but it's your entire unit that is suffering that illness with you. Because no man is an island, and you are in an interactive interactive environment. So, in the same way, I looked at Vibhuti and Sharan's story as being not just of Vibhuti and Sharan, but of his mother and of his and of her father-in-law, and also of her parents. Why did they get her married so fast? Because they obviously knew that out of sight, out of mind, which is a very Indian parent thing to do. Ki, oh, once she's married, she's not our responsibility anymore. But at least her mother knew enough that she gave her the pills. Now, those pills are used almost like a way of subjugating Vibhuti's true character, which has to be done to a lot of extent, because a lot of people think depression means just sadness, but depression actually means a lot of mood disorder as well. It means that you're going to be up one day and you're going to be down one day, and you're going to be this way one day, and one day you're going to think I want to throw myself off a building, and the other day you're going to think I'm so happy that there's
Or you
nothing
just
wrong.
flatline like Vibhuti in this. Yeah. Mm.
Exactly. You're just existing at a state where one day follows the next, and you don't hyper focus on what the future holds, which is actually, for me, I consider it to be a state of bliss, because that's when my mind is not going crazy and doing loops.
Yeah, it's a respite that you get.
Yes, which is
Yeah.
so very needed. Yeah,
Yeah, but it's wonderful that you're talking about it so openly because I guess,
absolutely.
first of all, it's acceptance and, the fact that
Absolutely.
you're taking the help that you need, you know, that's,
Absolutely.
yeah,
And for me, it is not, it is no longer and never has been something that I choose to do. It is something I need to do. And
okay.
I've, at different places in my life, and I don't shy away from saying this, I've had suicidal ideation. I have been suicidal. I have attempted as well. So the thing is that if I don't today, if I have any sort of platform and I'm not going to talk about it, I feel like I'm doing myself as well as anybody who knows me the biggest injustice, because I'm hiding the very core of me. I'm hiding the integral truth of my life. And that's what I've tried to do through instruments of torture, is put out so many integral truths, which all of us tend to just skirt around. We'd like to think that nahi wo alag hai. This is different. We don't do it this way. Our families don't do it this way. But you know what? It's actually more common than it's not. 40% of India is neurodiverse in some way or the other. We just don't recognize it.
I think awareness is finally, we're starting to come, right? So
I don't know,
it's a
Anuradha. I think
okay.
the awareness we're talking about is a very distilled, small amount of people. Don't you think? It's more of a,
True,
I
yeah.
mean, yeah, you're talking about the tier one cities and maybe few of the tier two cities which have started showing. But if you look at the vast majority of India, they don't live in those demographics, do they? So I think we're still
Yeah.
far way
But
to go.
I'm not sure because I remember this was a few years ago, an uncle of mine in
Hmm.
Lucknow, and
Hmm.
I remember speaking to him and my aunt, and they just matter of factly he said, कि, yeah, I was depressed. So I said, what happened? He said,
Hmm.
हाँ मरने को दिल करता था, तो हम मेडिसिन
Hmm.
लिया अभी ठीक है. So they were
Acha.
so open, like they were talking about
Open
it like
about it.
as if he
Hmm.
had fever or a heart disease or something. So he
Hmm.
just said, कि हाँ हाँ दवाई. I said, now you're better. Yeah, now I'm better. I'm taking medicine, and that was it. So this
That's
is
a
in Lucknow.
very
There's an elderly couple.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
very refreshing thing to
very
hear, that
refreshing.
somebody
Yeah,
actually, in that generation, especially the generation over us, maybe my experience has not been that open, in the sense that what I've seen people around me, I mean, I'm very open about it, but I've found that still most people that I come across are still hiding it like it's something that they are worried about. I also think that there is a huge cross sectionality between your, economic status, your socio-political status, your, where you are in education, what generation of learner you are, and I think all of that greatly impacts your ability to accept these abstract things about yourself, That's at least in my experience what I've seen.
Yeah, I think the fact that you're talking about it, and somebody like
Yeah,
me, honestly, I'm saying, if somebody's, I'm telling you honestly, if somebody
yeah,
says I
yeah,
feel anxious when going for a party,
yeah,
I would
yeah.
say just get over it. Once you're
Get
there,
over
it'll
it.
be okay. And then
Yeah,
I realized,
yeah,
oh, okay, you get
yeah,
panic attacks. Oh, you get that anxious. So
yeah,
even for someone like me,
yeah,
I should know
yeah,
better.
yeah,
But it
yeah,
takes some time to
yeah,
understand, कि,
yeah,
okay, a person
yeah,
goes through that just to make a phone call, just to go
yeah.
somewhere,
Oh my God, I have
Yeah.
tremendous anxiety when it comes to I'm able to retain very few friends because I will make a plan thinking that I'll be okay, but when the day approaches to actually put the plan into fruition, I will find myself getting so nervous and so anxious that inevitably I'll be telling my husband that, I can't do it, I just can't do it, can we cancel, so now I've kind of made my peace that I am going to live like a hermit, and that's okay with me. So, I'll probably meet people once in a month, and my social battery is already done, you know.
Yeah, so
So,
no, so I get it, So like when I listen to somebody like you, then I understand that, oh, this is serious business. It's not one of those
yeah,
just a
yeah.
reluctance that happens last minute that I'm feeling
Yeah,
lazy
no,
or something,
no,
Yeah,
no, no. It's
yeah.
almost you feel like a physical unwillingness, which is kind of, it's weighing down your insides. It is actually so physically manifested, especially I've seen that with my depression, I have digestive issues. I have, so for example, I get tremors, from time to time, which are again my nervous system reacting when there's any overwhelmment. I have like my jaws are completely flattened, which is a very painful thing because I've clenched my teeth for years through the night, you know. So for me, it manifests so physically as well. It's very difficult to just say, oh, come on, this is something that your head is making up. No, it's not. I have a debilitating headache. I have something called occipital neuralgia, where one side of my scalp is on fire at certain times in the month, and that's all as a it's a representation of the depression.
Yeah, these are all very
So
real things, whatever you're saying. It's not imagined or
absolutely no,
yeah.
no, no, they're not. They're actually needing to be medicated kind of stuff. So
Yeah, no, it's great that you
yeah,
recognize that and you're talking about it. So, you
yeah,
mentioned this other story is also the Beauty Queen story. That
yes,
was just so
yes, of
sad. I felt
course.
sorry for the girl that her mother has pushed her to
Did
become
you?
this person.
Hmm,
Yeah, I
hmm,
felt sorry for
hmm,
her.
hmm. Yeah, maybe. I
Beauty is
honestly that
everything for her, even when trying to,
I yeah. It
yeah,
is quite sad, right? It
very
speaks
sad. Her
about how
husband's
we
trying to connect with her, but,
yeah,
she thinks that
yeah,
he's lucky to have her. But
yeah.
of course, that's not the
But
case.
somewhere, did you feel that her character also sounded a little bit lazy? Because I tried to get that across. Like
Yeah,
she's
yeah, of course,
very
very lazy.
happy to not do the work, to not
Very.
change herself.
Yeah, yeah, very lazy, and so that's what I'm saying. It is so sad because she lacks complete self-awareness. Till the end,
Exactly.
she has no
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I
Yeah,
was trying to get across because this is actually a person that I've seen pretty closely, and just the lack of self-awareness, almost because beauty is everything. Your external beauty is the only rubric through which you view anything. So I've seen this lack of self-awareness, and that's what I was trying to write into this character was this subtle unlikability. So I hope I've got that across because there are many, she does get options where her husband does try to connect with her and she can grow past that, the just the just the surface of it. But yes, I guess it is very sad because that's all she's seen. That's the
it's
only
almost like
approval
there's
she's ever
nothing
gotten.
there. There's
There's
nothing there,
nothing.
honestly.
Yeah.
And it's interesting you're saying that because it's just a few pages long. It's a short story, but to get that
Yeah.
across, it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I
Oh,
can almost
thank
see
you.
and look into that person and see into her
Yeah.
mind and what's going on there, and it's blank. She just wants
Correct.
to get out, go shop, and have a great time.
Yeah, yeah. But I think somewhere she also is probably carrying a lot of her own trauma, having seen her own parents maybe interact at such a surface level, and growing
Yeah.
up with just that key, okay, you are your looks. So I'm assuming that people who have what we call pretty privilege are actually pretty wretched in their own way because when, you're literally viewed like a hunk of meat, right?
Yeah,
So I
because she wants to
assume,
go play, in the mud and
yeah,
everything, but she's
yeah,
not allowed. So she has those
yeah,
instincts as a child, but she
exactly.
just
So
wants to please her mother. Yeah,
yeah. So
yeah,
exactly, at the end of the day, she's done what every kid would do, is just fit into the mold that is made for them by their parent. So
yeah.
you do feel bad for her.
Yeah, so like I was telling you, your stories, I mean, some of them are agonizing, and it's like, okay, there's a
Mm,
lot of brutality because it's about instruments of torture. But
yeah,
how do I put it, like in a twisted way or in a whatever
mm,
way, some of them are, they find peace, they find
yeah,
love, they
yeah.
find something,
They
so it
find their own
kind of,
truth.
yeah, their own
Hmm.
truth
Hmm.
kind of
Yeah.
works out for them at the end, so it's not
Yeah.
everything is so sad, you know.
Yeah.
Huh.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah,
For anybody who's considering buying the book, it's not one big tragedy. It's not a Greek tragedy at all. It is actually, I mean,
yeah,
trajectories which are human trajectories. So bittersweet at times. And at sometimes people find such wonderful solutions to their so-called problems or deviances or whatever it is. It's yeah, it is. I'd like to think there is a little bit of hope, and there is a lot of love in the book. Almost every story in it is a love story of some sort. So I think that's at the core of the book as well.
exactly. I was going to mention that because there's a lot of love in
Yeah,
everything, whether it's coming out, like in the first story,
romantically, yeah, or not,
it's from
exactly.
himself he's getting it.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
The love
So
is there in every story. It's like they're looking for love and they're kind of finding it in some way.
in some way or the other, exactly. So even
Yeah,
in the first story, even if it was for a fleeting moment, and even if it was with a person that he made up in his own head, at least he felt that true emotion that he deserved to feel.
yeah,
And then of course, as you've read, there are certain stories where it's all out, either it's all out romantic or sexual love, but then there are equal stories where a person is desperate just for approbation or love from a maternal figure, or just somebody that they look up to. So I think every story has its basis very strongly in our human connections and the love we hold for each other.
yeah. Like it's basically it's not like you cure them of whatever is plaguing them or
Yeah.
something, but there is a resolution towards the end. So I like that.
Yes,
I'm going to read
absolutely.
out something which, your
Mm-hmm.
instruments of torture. I'm going to read out about
Mm-hmm.
one instrument of torture.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the Phalaris bull. I read it and I was like, oh my God. You know? Yeah.
I'll tell you about that. That's yeah.
Yeah. So it's basically the bull. This is a bull, right?
Yeah.
hmm Bronze bull
So made
for
of
the
bronze. Yeah,
execution
bronze.
of criminals, and the bull housed a hollow chamber where victims were deposited through a trapdoor.
Yeah.
Okay, and there's a fire was kindled beneath the bull, turning the
Underneath.
statue into an oven. And
Yeah.
no, and this part like got to me. I'm just, where it
Yeah.
says that the occupant will shriek and roar in unremitting agony, and his
Yeah.
cries will come to you through the pipes as the tenderest, most pathetic, most melodious of bellowings. Your victim will
Mm.
be punished, and you will enjoy the music. I'm like, so how did you
Yeah.
kind of connect this to a story?
So this story was one of the first that came to me, also because I know of a family like this. Not a family that has had a tragic ending like the one I've written about, but a family with two children exactly like this. And parents who, a person who lives away and works away because they have to, and a mother who has to take care of one absolutely bright, beautiful child and one who is,
Disabled,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah. Mm.
severely disabled. So I saw the Phalaris Bull. The entire idea of instruments of torture came to me when I saw a physical exhibition of instruments of torture. This was many years ago, and I was in shock. Like when I physically walked through this exhibition, and I looked at what was it? It was the Iron Maiden, right? This huge big casket with these spikes inside it, and it was so scary to think that that had actually been used on somebody, that I was like, this has something in it. This has stories that need to be told. And somehow it didn't take very much to collate the stories to the instruments, because somehow in my head, the characters were very well fleshed out. So when I thought about a sound escaping from the bull, which is actually not a, I've read that in some instances it's a melodic sound, in some instances it can also be very strange, like a, almost like a keening kind of a sound, which is why the child in the story actually has the strange laugh,
Yeah,
which was right, which was where
yeah, yeah.
I saw and basically he's burning with an internal fire was what I was trying to get across. And how did it come to me? I wish I knew. I am a person of extremely strange moods, is all I can say. So they just fell together. It just seemed like it was meant to be, you know. And I couldn't get the stories out of my head until I had them on the page. And that's what, even if it took me, say, about a year and a half to put together the whole book, I'd say before that, I toyed with the stories for at least a solid year and a half before that, before I put anything down on paper.
So the
So,
stories
I
just
did
came
know.
to you, all of them?
Not necessarily with their endings completely clear,
Yeah.
but yes, mostly the characters were very strong in my head because I was like, when I so as a writer, I think I'm an observer. So when I see a person, there'll be something in them which will just, and in my head, I'll kind of archive it away and say this needs to be gotten back to. So most of the characters that I speak about in the book are characters that I have archived away at some point or the other, thinking, hmm, this is somebody who I'd like to talk more about. So these were the characters that came back to me with natural reference to the instruments of torture that I had seen, and some of which I had not seen. So, for example, the chastity belt is has never been displayed because that is the one instrument that it could be a myth. There are no known cases of its usage in history. But I had to use that because I had that character, and it was a fun thing that I decided to do. He let me put in a little bit of deviance into the book per se. So that's where that one came from. But the others were some of them were instruments I saw, others I researched, and then I just collated them to the characters who were already waiting in my head, waiting for an out that somewhere she'll tell the story. So I guess that's how it happened.
Yeah, interesting. So these are eight stories, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. I want to tell whoever is listening in that, initially I was a bit hesitant. I was like, okay, I shouldn't read it at night. I'm going to get spooked or something. But the
Right.
stories are a breeze, actually.
Yeah. I'd like to think they are.
Yeah, they are.
Um, yeah, I'd
They're
love to
short.
be able to do,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I'd love to be able to do spooky stuff. In fact, my next book that I'm working on is a full-length novel, and that has a paranormal edge to it. I'd like to hope it's scary, but I don't think it is. I tend to write emotionally very scarring stuff, but not the kind of stuff that kind of makes you go yell in the night that, oh, there's somebody behind the door. Not that kind of scare.
A thrill in that as well. So, I
Hmm.
also went through a book of poems. I started it.
Oh, you
Yeah,
did.
yeah. I
Oh,
went through
nice.
two or three of them. And they're delightful. Uh,
Thank you.
Circus folk and village freaks, right?
That is right. That is
Yeah.
correct. Which
And
was
that's
my
on
first
Kindle
book.
Unlimited. So I was looking for
Yeah.
it. I thought when I found it on Kindle Unlimited, I said, okay, I'll read it right
Yeah.
away.
Oh,
So
thank you. I'm so glad. Thank you for
yeah,
getting it,
it's fun. The first one, the Mr. Subramaniam, who was bit by a
Subramaniam.
crocodile,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
the other one I read about the clown who becomes a porn star. I mean, like
Yeah,
fantastic,
of course. Pablo the clown.
Pablo.
Yes, of
Yeah,
course. Yeah.
yeah. So he gets his happy ending also, and he's successful.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Even in Mr. Subramaniam is happy lying in the mud and, being a crocodile, being worshipped. And his
Yeah.
wife also
Yeah.
finds her own,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
whatever.
So if you
Mhm.
think that the stories in this book are bizarre, the stories in that book are way more bizarre. And there's many more of them. I think there's 70 or 17 or 18 of them.
Yeah, yeah, I'm going to go
And
through it. I think
yeah.
I've went through three. I'm on the third one. But
Mm-hmm,
but they're
mm-hmm.
fun, and you read them fast and it's so
Yeah.
twisted. And my
Yeah.
whole thing is like, how do you think like this?
I
It's
wish I knew. But so this is the official party line that I'm supposed to give, is that one day when I was beating my husband, that's when the story of the torture came to me. But no, it didn't come like that. But honestly, Subramaniam, the first story that you're reading,
yeah,
that you read,
yeah.
actually came to me in a dream.
Oh,
And yeah, this crocodile man, and it was, I woke up at like 5 in the morning, and I kind of shook my husband awake, and I muttered, I said, Subramaniam. And he said, no, I'm Abhijit, honey. And he turned over and went back to sleep. His name is Abhijit. So but it kind of haunted me the whole day. This idea of Subramaniam, a crocodile man. And from that, I kind of expanded and I said, how many more so-called freaks that can I talk about that are actually really beautiful, normal, sane people who are whose jobs or who place in society whose place in society has subverted them in some way. And that's where circus folk and village freaks came in, and that's why I inverted. That's why it was not circus freaks like we call it, but the folk who lived in the village were actually the freaks, and the people who lived in the circus were actually just beautiful, normal people. So that's where that came in.
When did you write
And
this, Aparna?
I think the book came out. It came out in 2018, I think, end of 2017, end of 2018. In fact, Instruments of Torture was picked up by HarperCollins just before the pandemic hit. So
Okay.
yeah, so I was supposed to have released, we should have had the book out a couple of years ago. But as you know, the pandemic just stalled everything, and and I'm glad we waited because sales were way down. And so my editor, Prerna, she's just amazing. She was like, and I was like jittery, and I was like, what is going to happen? What is going to happen? And she just kept me so calm through the whole thing. She's like, don't worry, it's happening, it's happening, it's happening. So then when it finally happened, I was like, oh my God, it's here. So yeah, and I took her through six edits of the book. So she's patience personified. She deserves a book all in herself. And incidentally, she is an extremely talented poet herself.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the book I'm speaking about is Instruments of Torture. The one that came out initially was in 2018, I think.
Right.
So
So, I was telling you earlier as well before we started the interview that I couldn't find much on you. So
hmm,
this is just
uh,
basic curiosity. I want to know all about
sure,
you, what you do, and what you've been doing, and what led you
sure.
to this. I know
I'm
you're
an
a parent, huh? And that's a full-time
and
job.
yeah, I'm an international woman of mystery. No, I'm actually
We'll clear the mystery today.
I am a complete hermit. I live with my husband, and I have currently two children, my son and my nephew, both of whom live and study with us. My son is 10 years old, and my nephew is 17. And while I am not writing, I am being a full-time parent. And I'm too lazy to take up any job other than that. It keeps me on my toes. I have a dog who owns me, not the other way around. But I've worked in animation for quite a while. I worked as an executive producer, as a co-author on, I think I've written, there's a preschool show which is currently on Amazon Prime. I think it's still available, called Raju the Rickshaw. So this is way back in 2010 is when I was doing this. So I worked for about 6 or 7 years in the animation business, and I co-wrote the scripts as well as did the creative production as well for that show and the creative direction for that show. So that's where I was. I've always wanted to do things that are what do you call it? Artistically fulfilling. Um, and I growing up I had to do the whole BCom and that kind of thing, but I'm also a trained teacher, so I have a B.Ed. So I don't know who would let me near their children, but well, but I'm a trained teacher, and then I've worked as an educational consultant for a long part of my life. And then as I said, I worked with animation, and then I started making furniture on a whim, and then I got pregnant. So my doctor said, look, you either make chairs or you make a child, because I was I got pregnant really late. I was 36, I was 37 when my son was born. So since then, I've just been too tired to do anything else because they're a handful. Like I living surrounded by boys. Sometimes I feel like I'm Jagat Mata,
No, no,
constantly solving problems.
yeah, yeah, and you can't call yourself lazy at one point.
Trust me, I am. Trust me, I am.
We all are, and
Um,
we love those lazy days,
yeah,
lazy moments,
yeah,
but I
yeah.
mean, if you're a full-time parent and that to two boys, I mean, there's not
Mm,
much
yeah.
time left over, I'm
And
sure.
yeah, no, and through the pandemic, I actually had three kids with me because my niece was also living with me, and she completed her 4 years of her last 4 years of schooling with me as well. So there were three kids, and I was doing online schooling for all three of them. So it was like, this was Sparta. I was in war mode. In the morning, I'd get up at 6:30 and I'd have their desks ready and I'd have three different kinds of snacks and I'd be like, come on, this is it. We have to do this. So I've been through that as well. My niece is now dispatched. She's studying abroad. My nephew will be leaving in a year. So then I'll have just one. But hopefully by then I'll have a lot more books on the way. So let's see.
Yeah, so so I
Excuse
can
me.
just see this mommy mode where you're making breakfast and getting them for school. So where does this dark side come from, I mean, do you
Hmm.
see
Hmm.
things in a, I mean, I'm trying to be very
Yeah.
polite and I don't want to
No.
offend anybody listening to this,
Please,
so
you're more than welcome to offend me. I am very difficult to
no, no,
offend.
I'm
So
not worried about
please
you. I'm
do
not
your
worried about
worst.
you. I'm just worried about somebody listening in will just troll
I
me
understand.
somewhere. So,
Of
I'm just
course.
being careful. So, this twisted humor, this twisted way of looking at things, a
Hmm.
unique way of
Hmm.
looking at things, really. So,
Hmm.
where does it come from? Tell me about, when growing up, what were you reading and what do you
I
read
was always a
now?
very dark
Huh?
soul. I was always a very serious, dark soul,
Okay, so you
honestly.
said it, I didn't, right?
Yeah, I trust me. I was always quite twisted. Honestly, I was the sort of kid who, when the other kids were reading Nancy Drew, I was reading Leon Uris. So my
Okay,
father,
I've read
since
that.
I
Huh?
was, but I'm talking about the age of 14, right? And
Yeah, I think we all read
and
it around that time. Must have read it at 15 or something. But yeah, those were books we were not to,
we were
you were
not
not supposed
supposed
to
to
read
read.
those.
Yeah,
Yeah,
especially when you're studying in like a
yeah,
you're studying in a convent school
yeah, yeah.
run
Me
by all
too.
these nuns and stuff like that. So I think I was always quite dark souled, and I think the depressive tendencies didn't help because I always tended to. I think I didn't view things negatively, but I always was wanted to know why. I was always the person who was like, but what is the meta question behind this? I was quite a pain in the ass. I think I still am because I'm constantly wondering and questioning. I won't just accept an answer as, okay, fine, this is the way it's done and this is the way we'll do it. So, like my mom always used to tell me, oh my God, I mean, bringing you up has been, in fact, my mom's best question is the best. She always says, Beta, how much trauma have I given you that you've written two books like this now? She's still refusing to read my book because she's like, no, 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 it's so scary, it's so traumatizing, I don't want to get triggered. I'm like, okay, please don't read it then.
Yeah, yeah. So even I thought that before I picked it up. I told you I had it for like
Yeah,
2 days and then I picked it
yeah,
up. And because
yeah,
the book was so interesting and I'd already said that I want to interview you. So it took
yeah,
me two
yeah,
days and it
yeah.
was wonderful. Like I told you, it's like an airport read. You know, yeah.
Thank you.
So
That's I will take that compliment. Thank you.
no, really it is because what your mom is also saying, I was also a bit worried.
Yeah, but
It's not
I think
depressing. Yeah.
no, the thing is that before I was writing prose, as you know, and before I wrote Circus, Folk, and Village Freaks, I used to write poetry, but very serious kind of poetry. And I have a lot of published work in many international journals. So, for example, the Pen Review. I have work in, oh God, so many different. My memory is terrible, but a lot of very reputed journals have carried my poetry. So, and it was always very dark. I think there's a lot of generational trauma that I carry. Not because I had a terrible childhood, but no, I think I just saw a lot. I think I absorbed a lot more than was needed from even things that were not necessarily my experience, but was secondhand experiences. So I think, and also I'll tell you, I grew up in a small town where I felt completely and entirely misunderstood. I was always a square peg in a round hole. I was always this overweight girl who should have been quiet, who should have known her place. And I was always this girl who demanded more space. I was always the person who did not shy away. And, I had these thick glasses and I was really dumpy and everybody in class would tease me and but I kind of made I decided that I want to go beyond just that expectation that comes from a small town girl and try to find meaning in things that most people cannot see meaning in. So I think from a very young age, I started looking at things that most people would not even look. Even my youngest friendships were very strange friendships. Like one of my closest friends used to be this Babaji used to sit outside the temple and who had all these pet dogs that they were just stray dogs and he had several grandchildren all of whom were beggars at different places in the city. So he would send the dogs out on loans to beg with the children, like sort of protection, you know. And how I became friends with him was one day, I was driving past. I was, I think, just 18, just, you know, had a car and was driving past this temple. And this old man was there. And I said, come on, let me get you some ice cream. And I got him an ice cream cone. And he took one bite of the ice cream. And there was a monkey who he was obviously friendly with, totally free, wild monkey. So he would take one bite of the ice cream cone and then feed one bite to to the monkey, and then take one slurp and then give another slurp to the monkey. And they finished the cone like that. And you're talking about a man who's literally eating maybe one meal a day and who can't afford anything. So I started a friendship with him, and I would go and I'd hang out with him. And he used to be this perpetual drunk. Every time I'd go, he'd be like, he'd be high on toddy or whatever. And, and he used to call me Meri Ma. He used to say, oh, you're my mother from another, life or something. And
Yeah.
so I've always had very unique friendships in that sense. I always
I'm
tended to make
still stuck at that
friends.
visual that I'm getting, he's your friend and his friend is the monkey. So
Yeah, yeah.
just,
Isn't that amazing? And they
it's
were both sitting on
amazing.
this, yeah, on this broken khatia. They were sitting on this broken khatia, and he had this amazing sense of humor, and he'd keep talking about his buddhi, his old woman, his wife, and how she was giving him stress. And and of course, like things passed. This passed too, because then he died. And the municipality came, and they, overnight his entire thing was broken. It was gone. It was finished. No, his house wasn't there. The jhopri wasn't there anymore. The dogs had all been taken away. And that was, in the 1 year that I went away to study, I came back and he was not there anymore. So I think ever since I was a kid, I've always found a lot of beauty in the strange. I've always found a lot of beauty in what people would consider ugly. And even the people that I like to read, and I love to read people like Edgar Allan Poe, or all the, like, if you ask me, I'd say like Kafka's Metamorphosis is probably, one of my famous most favorite books. So yeah, so I guess I've always been very dark as a person. Sunshines and rainbows and fairies dancing in fields is not really it for me.
Yeah, yeah, no, and thank God for that. Uh,
Yeah.
so, like, I'm asking you this question. Do others
Hmm.
also look at you and say, ki, oh, like Aparna, you don't seem the kind who would be thinking like this and writing these books? I mean, do you seem sunny,
Hmm.
tempered most of the
I
time?
get this a lot. I get this a lot. आप तो बहुत, you look very bright and you look very खाते पीते घर का, and you look so happy and jolly, madam. Jolly, huh? Which is always code word for fat. That's the,
Ah,
like,
yeah,
it's so amazing.
yeah,
Somebody
yeah,
wants
yeah.
to tell you that you're fat without telling you that you're fat. They're going to say, madam, you're very jolly.
Or
I
cute.
love that.
That's the other
हाँ,
word.
I'm very cute say, oh, cute
Yeah.
say. Yeah, I can get that. I'm like, say it, it's okay. I don't mind.
This
But yeah,
cute, jolly person has all these dark
yeah.
thoughts,
But
basically.
mostly, don't all the jolly people actually have the dark thoughts? I mean, you see even in history, you'll find like a person like Robin Williams, who made the whole world laugh. I mean, what a sad soul he had inside,
Yeah, yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah,
So I
that's
think,
true.
yeah, I
No, and
think
that's what
most
I
of us.
like in your book, I missed mentioning that, it's peeling off the layers. And if you look at
Hmm.
all your characters, I mean, if
Hmm.
you meet them on a regular day, they're just regular folk.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
wouldn't have any idea of what's going on with them inside. So
And
yeah,
they
which is,
anguished. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And what really, what I realize is divine retribution to me is that my son is a lot like me. So,
Like
yeah,
how?
he's this crazy, crazy character with a crazy sense of humor. But he's got so much, not darkness inside, but he has a certain depth to him, which I find it's incredible. I have no idea where it comes from. And I'm like, boss, when I was your age, I barely knew what my toes were from my hands. But he makes statements like, when I talk about him and his best friend, he says, yeah, but I know that my friend has a much more gentle soul than me. And I'm like,
That's
what do
quite
you even know
deep,
what a
It's
gentle soul is? Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
So I guess it is a generational thing. I think it carries. I think maybe I come from a family where we've had a lot of deeper, darker thinkers. So
No, I think all families have that. It's just
है ना?
like in your book,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just not addressed or not spoken
Not
about,
at
but I think,
exactly,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah, yeah. In my
every
own
family has
family,
something.
yeah, and that's what we were discussing today. We were discussing, my mom and I were discussing that, it's so strange, but we think our family has a lot of mad people, and it does. Half my family is nuts. But we were like, every family is like that. It's just that in our family, we talk very openly about it. Like I even speak about my grandmom, who I realize now was severely depressive and probably had some personality disorders to boot. But at that time, there was no way we could detect it. Now I look at her, I think about her, and I realize, oh, these are the symptoms I had. Like she would pace the whole night. She wouldn't be able to sleep. She'd taken to eating tobacco because she used to get so anxious. She didn't know what to do. And she was this extremely high performing professional person. She was a doctor and she would work long hours, but any time that she had, she was just this overwhelmed person, and I realized that it is just in every family, and we just don't acknowledge it. It's so common. Most of our relatives actually are cuckoo, but we just think that
We just think they
it's
cuckoo
normal.
as a personality flaw,
Ha,
or
ha,
just
exactly.
they are like that
Yeah,
only,
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Instead of
exactly.
getting diagnosed, basically.
Mm, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So Aparna, it's been great talking to you. Tell me, you mentioned before we sign off, you mentioned your next book. You said that's a little paranormal, no?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So that I'd like to say that it's feminist fiction because the all the protagonists that I've written about are strong women characters, and I'd like to think that I have some flawed protagonists as well. That's something that really interests me, and the concept of banality of evil is something that I heard about a while ago, and it's fascinated me since. So, and the book has some of that, and yes, the basis of it is a house, and there is a ghost, and it's very openly spoken about ghost, which is why I don't need to say, oh, I can't tell you about this. But it's not a traditional ghost story. It has a very gothic environment to it. I've tried to create a gothic environment to it, but at the end of the day, as I said, all my stories speak about love, they speak about hope, they speak about human emotions. So that's what this one is
Yeah,
about.
yeah,
It's a
I'm
full
not
length.
scared now. Now I've read this
Good.
book and I'm addicted
Good.
to circus folk and village freaks. I can't wait to get back to it.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, that's awesome. Thank
It
you.
is
I'm
so
so,
cute
so
and it's so
glad.
happy. I love the way you've written it, the rhyming and everything.
Thank you.
It
Thank
tells a
you.
story
Thank
and it's
you.
such a happy, happy thing. And by the end of it, you're
Mm,
like, what? What happened?
yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Trust me, as you go deeper in, not all of the stories are happy and all of them are very twisted. So
Yeah,
I think that is my signature, or my signature style is telling it with a twist. So even
yeah.
the next book coming up is very normal people, but I think I try to go into their innermost thoughts and look at their innermost demons.
Hmm.
So let's see how that goes.
Yeah, thank you, Aparna. You're a wonderful writer. I really enjoyed reading this.
Thank you, Anuradha.
And
Thank you so much. I had intended to ask you a few questions as well, but you just let me ramble all and on. I can't thank you
I'm
enough for
not even
having me.
half as interesting, so you can ask me after this.
Trust me, you are. Trust me, you are. It's
Yeah.
it's yeah.
Anyway,
Some of the
thank you,
things you
Aparna. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Anuradha. And, thank you so much to anybody who's listening in. I'm going to sell the book. Please, please buy Instruments of Torture. It's available on Amazon and it's available wherever books are sold. And I hope you enjoy it. And thank you so much, Anuradha. I am so grateful to you.
My pleasure.